I was reading something today from a friend of mine, a high school friend of mine, from Facebook, and it kind of triggered something. And I should just read what she wrote, actually, if I can find it here. But it's about growing up in a small town. How many of you grew up in a small town? How many people?
Probably maybe 4,000 to 5,000.
4,000 to 5,000. Yeah, pretty small. Milwaukee? Mm-hmm. And Bronx.
The Bronx. No.
That's a small town.
Well, the apartment complex wasn't. Well. Where'd you grow up, Mark?
Philadelphia.
Philly?
Small town kid.
Another small town, Philly, yeah. I'm just going to read what Helen wrote here. I hope Helen.
There? Does she still live in Aberdeen?
Yeah, she does. Helen Humphries. I went to high school with her, and I grew up in Aberdeen, South Dakota, which is the third largest city in South Dakota. I always say this. It's the third largest city in South Dakota, and it has about 25,000 people in it. Here's what Helen wrote, and it really struck home to me in a way. But she said, I grew up in South Dakota in a town called Aberdeen. When I was a child, we had an area code, and you didn't use it. A lot of my clothes came from Kmart. If you had a pool, you were a king of the block. I never knew anybody that had a swimming pool, except for the blow-up kind, you know. Otherwise, you played in sprinklers in the summertime. Eating out at a restaurant was a huge deal that only happened for very special occasions. Fast food was leftovers at home. Eating popsicles was a treat on a hot day. We had an ice cream truck, and you could have $2 and have tons of stuff. You took your school clothes off as soon as you got home and put on your play clothes. And we had to do our homework before being allowed outside to play. If your mama worked, you were a latchkey kid. Somebody will have to explain that one to me.
Oh, you never heard that?
Latchkey kid?
Like you letting yourself in and out by yourself.
Oh, okay.
That's an old expression, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we never locked our home, in Aberdeen. My brother still doesn't ever lock his home. I shouldn't say that. This is
a dress out though.
Yeah. Anyway, if you were nobody paid for daycare. I don't even remember them having daycare. We ate dinner at the table. We went to school every day. Our phone hung on a wall in the kitchen and had a long cord where no private conversations or cell phones. We played light as a feather, stiff as a board, Mother Day I, or Mother May I, Double Dutch, hopscotch, cops and robbers, 1, 2, 3, not it, red light, green light, red rover, hide and seek, truth or dare, tetherball, tack, kickball, dodgeball, two square, and rode bikes. We rode bikes. Girls and boys played in the streets, not in the house. We came home when the street lights came on. Everybody, did you have that kind of rule? When should I come home? When the street lights come on, when they first come on, that's when you say, oh, I gotta go. Children were seen and not heard. Staying in the house was a punishment. The only thing that we knew about bored. You can find something to do before your parents find something for you. We ate what mom and dad made for dinner, and we ate nothing at all. There was no bottled water, and we drank from the tap or the water hose because there was no coming in and out, coming in and out of the house. When you get thirsty, you just... We watched cartoons on Saturday mornings. We rode our bikes for hours and ran around in the streets until dark and came home before my mom and dad had to find us. We weren't afraid of anything. School was mandatory, and teachers were people who you could trust and respect. We said the Pledge of Allegiance. We washed our mouths around our elders because all of our aunts, uncles, grandpas, and grandmas, and our parents' best friends were all our parents. They could all whoop us, and you didn't want them telling your parents if you misbehaved. Those were the good old days. Only fear for me is my kids today will never know how it feels to be a real kid like it was when I was growing up. I loved my childhood. Kids these days will never understand how we grew up. And that thing about we weren't afraid of anything, that's in bold. You know, because there was really nothing to be afraid of as kids, and we didn't have much of a past. You know, we didn't have like a horrible, mean past. I don't really know any kids that were any different than me. When I was growing up, there were no minorities. We were all just kids, you know, and there was no fear. We could walk anywhere in town, even as a small kid. I remember walking to the liquor store as a small kid to get cigarettes for somebody. And I would just tell the person at the liquor store that this is for my mom or whatever it was. It wasn't for my mother, but it was for somebody that needed cigarettes. But, you know, they look at you like, I guess he's telling the truth, you know, and they give you the cigarettes. But you didn't have to worry about whether you're going to be safe. Our parents never worried about where we were, as long as we were home for supper and lunch, and, you know, if it was a weekend. And but there was nothing to be afraid of. There was no horrible past, and there was the only future that we knew about was, you know, when's the next time we go out and play, you know, and where's my bicycle and things like that. I had a brand new Schwinn banana bike, Stingray. I think it was called a Stingray, a 5-speed Stingray. Had a shifter. It was the fanciest bike in town, and I remember riding it to the swimming pool. We never chained our bikes up. We didn't lock them up, because what could happen, you know? Somebody could maybe ride off with it or something. And so the worst thing did happen to me. I came out, my bicycle was gone. And it was a brand new Schwinn 5-speed. It was like $100 bicycle. And this is back in the 60s, you know, or 70s. So I think about, you know, growing up in a small town in the 60s and 70s, right? And so I went home and I told my parents that my bike is gone. Somebody took it. So they nobody could believe it. You know, somebody took my bike. So we headed back over to the swimming pool to see what the heck the deal was. And I said, it was right here. You know, it was right here. And there was, you know, 20, it seems like 100 bikes, but there's probably, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 bikes all. And I said, it was right here. And, you know, I was like, what do I do? What do I do? And then all of a sudden there's a kid riding up with my bicycle. And, you know, he came up and I grabbed it and I said, this is mine. He goes, oh, I just took it for a ride. You know, it was like, you know, it was no big deal. And, you know, so there was nobody was stealing my bike. He was just checking it out, you know. He took it for a ride and he brought it back. And it was like, wow, you know. And, you know, all sorts of things like that. We never had really much except for the present moment, you know, in our childhood. You know, everything was very, very much now, you know, what is happening now. And, you know, we thought about the future. When the street lights came home and we didn't get home, then we thought, well, I'll get a whooping, you know, or not necessarily a whooping, but we could get in trouble with our parents, you know, for not being home on time, which happened a lot. And, but, you know, growing up in a small town, we never heard anything, I never heard anything about meditation. The only spirituality that I ever heard about was that we're going to church on Sunday, you know, Lutheran church. And, you know, that's what everybody did. They went to church. Years later, I went back to Aberdeen. I had written a couple of books on meditation, and I went back. I was doing some bookstore talks at the time, and I talked to somebody in Aberdeen, somebody at the newspaper, and they put an article in and said that Shane Wilson, is a former Aberdeen resident, and that he's going to give a talk about meditation. He's an author and all this stuff. So it was to happen at the library, and so I was there, visiting my friends and my parents and everything, and it came for this talk on meditation. And I have to say, most people had no idea what it was going to be about or what even meditation was about. And this was like maybe 7 or 8 years ago. They just didn't know. They confused it with yoga. They thought they were going to be somebody doing some pretzel poses or something like that. And so this was in the paper and all that. And I think 4 people showed up. Or maybe 6 people, but 3 of those were family members, And I remember my brother fell asleep while I was talking, and I thought, well, that's okay. I'll let him sleep. But it was very interesting But I know, I happen to believe in past lives, and I know in my past life that I did a fair amount of meditation, or what was similar to meditation anyway. And so when I heard about meditation in this life, I was really, really drawn to it, and I wanted to get back into it. So when I started practicing again, finally, this 30 years ago, something like that, really, in my late 30s when I started practicing. I didn't stop. I just kept doing it, every day. And that consistency, is really a part of the practice, and I told myself, well, this is something that's good for me and I'm going to be doing it. So again, this big long story is about presence. It always comes back to that, I think, for me. And about, being a child in a small town and living from moment to moment to moment to moment. And everything was outside. Even in the wintertime, we'd go outside and freeze and enjoy it. I don't know why, but and in the summertime, we were always outside. I'd come home, and my feet would be black because, of course, I wasn't wearing shoes, and we'd just be playing outside and being in the trees and just doing what kids do and being outside all the time. From the time we woke up, eat breakfast, go outside and try to make it home for dinner. We'd be indoors, and then we'd go outside again as soon as we could. And the days were long, and we didn't care about the mosquitoes, but it was a present moment experience. And now younger people today seem to, I don't have any kids, but I venture to say that most of them spend more time indoors than they do outdoors. Is that true? I think that's true. They have computers and things like that, and that's neither good nor bad, but it can help feel that there is more stress and more tension in the lives of younger people than it was then. So that just means that there's more need for the practice of meditation. I feel there is anyway. I got a message earlier today from somebody from the teacher training program that was in one of the modules about teaching children. And I responded to her, about how important it is. I feel that it is important to teach young people meditation. I think it's probably one of the best things that we can do for our society, is to teach meditation to the young kids. And have them, teach them to such an extent that they can enjoy it, so where they're not pressured to do it. It's just something that they can enjoy and find a time to, to find the ability to come into the present moment. and really have them experience their feelings themselves, and how to express their feelings, and to get to know them and share them. And because, as we know, when we do meditation, feelings are a big part of it. You know, the sensations and how the feelings come up, and the states and the emotions involved with it. And that's one of the benefits. And I think that's one of the wonderful things that children can understand at a young age, how they feel, what to do about these feelings, and to allow that to be a part of their life, to have that understanding rather than repress or suppress their emotions and their feelings. I'm just going to see if anybody, I'm looking for you people online, I'm looking to see what you're up to. Everybody's saying hi to everybody. Adina, Daniel, Lisa, Muzinga, Gina, James, and John. If anybody online has a question, just let me know, and we'll see if we can address it. So this is kind of a different kind of introduction that I gave. It was more about a little bit of a story of my upbringing, but we want to. I'm using that to as a segue to get into our meditation in regard to presence, and using meditation to be in that present moment, relinquishing the past, and letting ourselves be free of any kind of problems that we might consider that they could happen in the future, that kind of thing. And just we want to look at it, meditation. I mean, it can be much deeper than this, but for the most part, we can look at it as like a mini vacation. Just giving ourselves a break. And from that standpoint, it's very, very healing. The stress, is reduced. But it can be deeper than that, into understanding our true nature, understanding who we are, from the standpoint of our feelings and our emotions, and from the insight that can arise from meditation. So we sit in meditation and we focus on something that we probably haven't been focusing on all day, something like the breath. It doesn't have to be the breath, but I encourage people to use the breath. And then we come into the present moment, by focusing on that. We find a certain amount of freedom because we're not so concerned about the past and the future. And when we hold that spot for ourselves and sit into that, in that area, there's a huge, it can be a huge amount of relief, much like taking off the proverbial backpack, full of boulders that we've been needlessly carrying around. And really, the result is that we understand that all along that we've been causing our own suffering, whatever that might be, what extent that might be, and we can get a chance to kind of review how it came about. And we want to keep in mind that any kind of difficulties that come up for us, whether they come up in meditation or outside of meditation, are valuable for us, because there's lessons to be learned from that. And that's universal. Every problem that everybody has can be very valuable. And we can actually learn to cherish it because of the lessons that we can get from that. Everything has a lesson tied to it. There's other reasons why, this suffering or this negativity, negative emotions, we could call them, are there, and why they can be advantageous. We could talk about this for a long time, but again, if we want to understand any kind of advantage for negative emotions, it's because there's a lesson behind it. There's something that we can learn by it. And we have to get these lessons in life Otherwise, they'll show up again and again and again and again. So the sooner that we get them and pay attention to them, the more we can start really enjoying life and understanding life. And I hope everybody understands what I'm saying by that. If you don't, ask a question after meditation, and we can address that and talk about that a little bit more. But things do come up in our meditation, and they come up for a reason. They come up because it's basically our subconscious, or maybe even our conscious, talking to us and saying, this is what we got to get. This is what we have to learn today. So we will do, I guess, about a half-hour meditation here. I will guide us through the first part of it. And I'm just going to do kind of a basic meditation guiding, talk a little bit about the body and the idea to come into this presence that is really our true nature. So please make yourself comfortable. And close the eyes. Take a few nice deep breaths, if you like. Become familiar with the breath. When we meditate, if we can focus on something that has very little meaning to us intellectually, this is usually the best, or one of the best objects that we can use to focus on. And that's one of the reasons we use the breath. At least many of us do. We find the area on the body where we feel the breath and use that as our focal point. It's not that the breath is not important. It's very important for us. But it is more or less controlled by the subconscious. We breathe on our own. The body breathes while we sleep. The body breathes while we're thinking about other things other than breathing. And so it's just a natural function of the body, much like the heartbeat or the cleansing of the body that the kidney and liver does. So as meditators, the breath can be a very important tool. And interestingly enough, anytime we focus on any aspect of the body, we can really look at this as one of the better meditation objects. Because the body has sensations, and it has a great deal to teach us in the area of selfing, as far as feeling as if this is our body. The body is not very stable. It's constantly changing. It's a very valuable lesson in itself, impermanence. But it's really our vehicle, a vehicle of choice, we could say, when we focus on it. It was the body that got us to the place that we're at right now. It's the body that took us through our life growing up. My body carried me through South Dakota in my childhood, traveling around the world and ending up in Wisconsin and now being in Arizona for the last 20 years. And it's the body that did all this. It functioned as it's supposed to function. It's the vehicle. And it's also the body that will wear out when its time is done. So focusing on any aspect of the body can seem boring from the standpoint of everyday life, everyday living. If we find somebody on the street and ask them to stop and focus on some aspect of the body, they would find it extremely boring unless they were a meditator. But with all these lessons that the body has to teach us, it allows us to come into the present moment through that focus, that light focus of the body. And so if we use the breath, again we find a place in the body where the breath physically touches the body, where we can feel that movement. And we focus on that. We can notice the impermanence, we can notice the change, the temperature, the sensation, all these different aspects. And while we do that, we're relinquishing our thoughts of the past and our thoughts and ideas of the future. So it's an instant surrender. We're letting go of this story. And then we realize that the story really isn't necessary for us to be happy. And it actually gets in the way of our peace of mind. Many of us are familiar with the 5 hindrances and how the 5 hindrances are the things that hinder our concentration, and they also hinder our happiness in life. The desires that we have for things to be different, the desires for things to be better in the future, the desire to have more control. These things have everything to do with our life outside of the present moment. Restlessness and worry, is the mind continually coming back to a thought, coming back to a problem. It's the continual going back to the future or going back to the past to seemingly make our lives more complete in some way. We can be worrying about ourselves, or we can be worrying about others, or we can be worrying about situations. And things. And any kind of ill will, another hindrance, or anger is based on something that has happened in the past. Get angry at other people, angry at situations, angry at a predicament that we're in, angry at world affairs. And it's simply visiting thoughts that we've had already in the past, conditioned, and we're wishing to condition them in a certain way by having more control. So these hindrances, including sloth and torpor or fatigue, mental cloudiness or boredom, and doubt in our abilities, doubt in other people's abilities, doubt in the abilities of our leaders of the world. All these things have to do with the mind getting tangled up in thoughts of the past or the future. And so when we're meditating, we have an opportunity to come into the present moment. And this is our vacation spot, if you will. It's not that we're hiding from anything, but we're actually come to the present moment to learn, to understand who we are and what we are, and how our mind operates, how the world operates. And coming into the present moment gives us an opportunity to see the real world in many ways. When everything is said and done, we come to the end of our time. Again, we'll be relinquishing the past, and we won't be looking toward the future. When we're done with this body, it'd be like taking off a coat, that old coat that we have, and no longer needing it anymore. Just setting it aside. We can even visualize ourselves walking away from it. But of course, nobody will be walking. And we, at least for a while, will be in perpetual present moment reality. And so meditation gives us an opportunity to understand what that is and how it is. And to live life in the present moment outside of meditation can be a real gift for us as well. To be in the present moment as much as we possibly can, from moment to moment. And that's where we find true peace of mind. Relinquishing the struggle, the need for things to be a particular way. Realizing that nothing has to change from the way it is at this moment in order for us to be happy. And this is the key to awakening. So we sit in our meditation posture on the floor or in a chair. We bring our attention to the breath. We allow the breath to take us into the presence. When we catch the mind wandering into the past or the future, we notice that and then bring it back to the breath or whatever we might be using as the meditation object. And we understand that this place is really a place of unconditional love. In fact, that's what this presence is. Absolute acceptance due to this unconditional love. And an opportunity to surrender and to let go. If you'd like to, you can bring your hands together in front of your heart. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you all. At the beginning of each meditation, I always put out an invitation, to what to look for. And the theme for tonight was obviously, presence, which really is the same almost week after week after week, for us to come into that present moment and to experience that and understand it. And if we understand that, then we understand ourselves. Just different ways to verbalize it. I think every practice of meditation, in many ways they all have the same benefit. They all have the same outcome, I guess you could say. And that is to calm the mind. Of course, we're calming the body, bringing ourselves into this environment where it's easy to do that. There's not a lot of loud noises, and there's not a lot of activity and things, so we bring ourselves into a room like this, or if we're at home, we want it to be nice and quiet, and very conducive to a nice peaceful meditation. And so we're kind of dialing things back a little bit, so that we can focus on something like the breath. We come into this this present moment awareness, this present moment reality. And that's where we find the truth of things, the truth of ourselves, about ourselves, and the truth of how we live our life, and the truth of the world. And it's funny, a lot of people that are new to meditation, they will do what we just did. They'll close their eyes and they'll get extremely tired, because they haven't conditioned the mind and body for this kind of practice. As soon as they close the eyes for any length of time, it's a signal to the body that, well, this is the time for sleep, because that's the only time that a non-meditator will really close their eyes, unless they're, some people are used to closing their eyes and taking kind of like a cat nap in the middle of the afternoon, not necessarily sleeping, but they just kind of take a break in the afternoon. But they're letting their mind wander, and they might set a timer or something like that, but they're not really meditating, In other words, they might fall asleep and they might not fall asleep. But in meditation, we're conditioning the mind and body in such a way that there's energy, actual energy, with the eyes closed, and with us doing this practice, and in that energy is a certain amount of alertness, that we should be alert to things that are happening, that are coming up for us. And it's not a time for sleeping or for being drowsy or anything like that, but it is a time for de-stressing, and that just happens naturally because we're not worried about the past and the future. We're not concerned about these things. It's not that we aren't going to pick them up after we're done meditating and start worrying again, or examining what could have happened or what will happen for us. But in meditation, we can find that switch and turn it off. And the reason I say we learn more about ourselves is because of the things that come up in that stillness of mind. And it's oftentimes the things that have been buried, and things that we don't recognize, things that we don't that really haven't registered, because us humans have such a habit of keeping ourselves distracted all the time. We distract ourselves the moment we wake up in the morning. A lot of us do anyway. You know, we were doing this and doing that, brushing our teeth and eating, getting breakfast, and then we find our routine, whatever it might be, maybe some kind of work or maybe some kind of activity, and we're very good at distracting ourselves all day long, and then in the evening we go, well, I've distracted myself so much that I'm going to have to go watch TV or something now, you know, to unwind and to distract ourselves at a different degree, you know, a different level. So it's a very interesting life that we live when we spot these things, and it's all to do with awareness, you know. And when I say we're distracting ourselves, most people have no idea that they're even doing that until they become aware that they're distracting themselves, and they're distracting themselves from seeing the truth, which is that we suffer, and we suffer because of our attachments, and we can let that go. We can surrender all that, renounce all of that, and at that moment we can find peace, because we are giving up our need to control the situation at that time, need to control our lives or the lives of others, or the people, places, and things in our life.